Search visibility now demands more than just keywords. SEO strategies are evolving fast, and the evolution of AEO and GEO are now pressing the SEO strategies of the past. So, how should search professionals adapt? According to Single Grain's May 2025 report, zero-click searches now dominate. 65% of Google searches globally and in 2024 ended with a zero-click experience. And that share is expected to exceed 70% in 2025. This shift makes AEO, which targets featured snippet, voice results, and AI responses, absolutely essential alongside traditional SEO. Here's the challenge. SEO teams face tough choices now. What is this new name for SEO? AEO focuses on delivering direct answers. GEO targets visibility within AI-generated summaries. Traditional SEO still drives the majority of organic traffic. How can we balance these competing priorities? This is the Voice of Search podcast. I'm Jordan Cooney, and joining me today is Amy Jarenka, SEO strategist at SEO Sustainable, which builds strategy and workflows for the future of search. Today, Amy and I will share how to effectively integrate AEO, SEO, and GEO for the maximum search visibility. Amy, welcome to the Voice of Search podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So I'm so glad that you're on the show. We've actually had some really fun prep sessions, and we've gotten to talk a lot about your kind of growth and your journey in building your SEO career. And so before we get into all the crazy questions about what is SEO now, what the heck is this thing that we're evolving into when it comes to consumer discovery, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, how you got into the SEO game, and what you do now and how you're exploring this industry.
Yeah, so I've been around for about 10 years. I wanted out of the customer service department, and the company I was at was creating a marketing department. And so I started to bounce around and did a few things, and then there was one meeting with a new consultant that was SEO. And she laid out everything that was going on. It was right after Penguin and Panda and how the web works and how complicated it was. And I saw that it was a giant puzzle, and I was like, I'm in. Not only is it a puzzle to play with, but it's also a way to do marketing that adds value to users. And so I really liked those side things, and that's how I ended up there. Over the years, I've been able to do some enterprise and being able to do agency and try a lot of different things. But when AI came out, it just was exciting and fun to me. So as an early adopter, and I've been watching it, and I really see the shifts of how our search is changing, behavior is changing, and how we're going to do our jobs differently as SEO, AEOs, GEOs, what have you, and how that's playing out as a really fun time for us.
It really is. I think it's like the craziest time that we've seen in our industry. It's probably the most transformative in the SEO history, at least since really the introduction and expansion of mobile and how Google really was going to prioritize mobile over any other experience. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about this thing, this beast that is, what is these three-letter acronyms, AEO, SEO, GEO. Tell us how you define this. How would you define these, and how would you define these expectations to our audience, to the SEO community at large?
Yeah. So first off, I'm part of the All Acronyms Welcome Club. I
Really,
did some posts
really,
on
Amy.
it, and I actually have a working document that's like this giant glossary of all the new acronyms I'm finding, as well as terms, right, and things that we can kind of keep up with, and then some of the new tools that all of us are creating, and it's super fun. And I'm like, why right now we get to redefine who we are and what we do. Right? We get to go whatever area we want to in this new sort of search, when we get to be able to approach it and get our new theories and our own ideas out there. So whatever acronym you find that works for you and the way you're going to be doing this new SEO, go for it. I'm also a huge fan of new things need new language. So when I'm explaining this not only to my own brain of what I'm changing and what I'm doing, it makes some space in there. But also, how am I going to explain this to clients and C levels? And they're
Right.
going to need different terms, and they're going to know that I need to do different things, and that's going to require new language to be able to let them know, right, that I'm keeping up with stuff. And for me, what the basics are, the big ones that we're seeing, right? SEO, I call that the 10 blue link SEO, right? So that's
Yep.
traditional SEO, and that's where you put in a search and it comes back, and we see that search page with those pages that are linked,
Yep.
right? AEO is more about answer engine optimization, and that would be when people are going and they're asking questions and having a dialogue with these LLMs. Right. And that they're getting answers, and you want to get your chunks or your content in those answers, right? GEO is just making sure it's more brand exposure. That's generative engine optimization. It's a little bit more of a mouthful. And that's more of a generalized term that I'm applying to of just trying to get in those generative outputs. I don't feel like we need to do one or the other. I feel like we can do a combination of. I feel, again, like this is a time where as SEOs can now grow and move into whatever we decide it to be. Um, Generalized terms and all that stuff, whatever sticks and hits the wall that becomes the industry standard, let's do it. But let's not try to put ourselves in a box yet. Right? This is a time
Yeah.
for expansion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So let's talk about that expansion for a little bit. Let's talk about these three concepts and what is your perception of like how these three intersect with one another? Are the skills the same? Are the expectations the same across all three? I appreciate the definition, and I actually fundamentally really agree with it. But I don't know if our listeners understand the unique nature of them and how much they kind of connect or intersect with one another.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So again, SEO, search engine optimization, what we know we love, right? What we've all been doing, has been reverse engineered, poked with a stick. A lot of data, a lot of things that we already know, what we can do repeatable processes, right? And that's really, you're putting in a search term or a question right into that Google search box. And like I said, you're getting back that list of articles that people are then going to your website to do research, right? So they're clicking on those links, they're going to your website, you get that inbound traffic, and then you try to move them through the funnel. And then you're trying to get that brand recognition, and you're trying to get that organic traffic website from those questions, from those search terms. AEO, answer engine optimization, that's when this entire conversation is happening inside the LLM. So it's happening inside ChatGPT. It's happening right there on what Google AI mode is showing them. They're not going anywhere. They're not going to websites. They are having that conversation. And then that AI is going out and gathering, doing a variety of searches for them and gathering that information and making that generalized content for them. They're answering those questions there. That's really where you want the content that you create and your brand to really show up in those answers. And you're looking to get your brand name and you're looking to get your differentiators in those answers when they're asking specific questions that apply to your brand, right?
Yep.
And so it's going to be a different sort of way. We're not going to get that website traffic, which is tough, right?
Yeah.
Right? We're going to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
losing the metrics that everybody knows and loves.
I think that's the key, right? I mean, it's like
Mhm.
there's this each one of these has its unique characteristics, but the expected outcome is going to
Yes.
be different,
Different.
right? And they need to be measured as such differently.
Mhm.
Although many of the same skills, many of the same tools, many of the
Yep.
same in some cases many of the same tactics might work to be present or visible or consume some positioning in them.
Yeah.
The outcome on the other end might change. You might not get as many
Right.
clicks. It might just be an awareness play. And I think that's what's really interesting
Mhm.
about these three aspects is that they are unique in some forms. Many of the inputs are the same, but the outputs can be certainly different.
Definitely, definitely. That's the $1 million question is how are we still going to show our value, right? How are
Yep.
we going to still show our worth? And so it's like, what do we want to start tracking? Where are we going to put our efforts? How do we divide this across different bots? It used to be like cared about Googlebot, right? And that
Yeah.
algorithm,
Yeah.
and maybe a little bit of Bing. But
Yep.
it was the same sort of similar, very similar bot, very similar algorithm. And now we have different LLMs that all have their own bots that we got to make sure can crawl our websites, right, to be able to render that content, which is a huge issue. Understand it, JavaScript and that sort of stuff, as well as where was I going with this?
No.
It all went
like where
away.
this is
It all
going.
went away. Oh, as well
Amy,
as
go
well
ahead. No,
as where.
yeah.
Oh, I was
I
gonna
want to
say,
actually jump in. I want to jump in and
perfect.
ask you a question about this, because I think this is where search professionals are struggling to determine what is the approach, or what's the need for AI discovery, right? And so between AEO, SEO, GEO, like, as you think about these different disciplines, where you can invest in them, like, which one deserves the right amount of resources? Which one, and how do you prioritize? Or should we even be looking at it as a prioritization exercise? Is it all the same bucket and you're just slopping out this stuff differently from the bucket? But like, I'm curious to get your perspective as to like how we prioritize, how we balance amongst these areas, and what's the expectation that a professional should use when they think about prioritization.
Yeah. So the way I'm doing it, right, is I'm sort of looking at it almost as the same bucket. So I am going to be using like AEO and GEO and those additional services to maybe try to expand some of my clients' book of service. We'll see about that, but I foresee, allocations in large corporations, company allocations. They're going to kind of bucket this with that SEO budget that they had. And so how do we figure out how to get AEO and how many resources need to go there without shooting ourselves in the foot with traditional SEO? And it's all about tracking. So I'm tracking sources. I'm tracking how many conversions we're getting from which LLM, because I remember where I'm going with this. Every LLM has a different algorithm. Every LLM, renders things differently. So I'm tracking, for your industry, what's the growth? What are we seeing the growth on which LLMs, and which, search bots are we seeing the growth in? And then we can do, again, which some people might shoot me for this, I'm using an old term, we can bring back some of that data-driven decision-making, right? You can say, hey, so here's your traditional search, and over the last 6 months, we've seen this amount of that search, grow in ChatGPT. So we know we now want to take this much of our budget and focus it on ChatGPT. And how can we get in there and get into those answers better? Because that's where we see traffic coming in. Here's our conversion rates. If our conversion rates are higher, we're making more conversions, we want to shift over there. That's how we're going to start, for me, to get that visibility to decide where do I want to spend, where do I want to allocate that budget to, and when to allocate that to, as well as, right? Exactly, right?
I want to ask you a question on this. How do we take brand into account here? Like, right. So I want to piggyback that piece, because brand is such an important part, especially about some of these LLM responses. Even when we look at like some of the AI mode stuff, like brand plays a pretty big role in what's going to show up. So how do we think about that in this scope?
Yeah, and not only does it play a big role, but that's what we really care about getting in there. Because they're doing all the research there. We need our brand in there, so then when they go to walk away and they go to decide to buy, they type our brand back into that direct search bar, right? So it's about getting our brand and our products in those answers. And so I think for me, how I'm doing it, brand is going to be part of off-page SEO. Right. So where we had off-page SEO and off-page AEO and off-page GEO, I'm going to start seeing the brand, and I'm going to be a brand marketer now. I haven't learned it yet, but I'm going to, right? Right. And so I'm seeing that that's, we're not looking for backlinks. We're looking for brand awareness in off-page these days. And that's where I'm going to be focusing my new efforts on as I make the transition. And then brand is all about content, right? So the way I've changed my content, generalized content is dead. The idea that, I'm going to make a piece of generalized content and then have inbound traffic, right? Then we're then going to move to the funnel, I think is going away completely. That is exactly what these LLMs do, right? So they don't need us to do that, right? Yeah, exactly. That content's not valuable to them. That's what they do. What is valuable is content that's based around your core pages, your homepage, right? Brand, and then your product and services, your money pages, as I call them, and then making topic clusters directly around those core pages, and then creating a body of content that shows your differentiators, that talks about the fears of your ICPs, what are the people I'm looking for, those direct answers, unique angles. So I don't feel that generalized content really has a great place in the future. Right now it still does, right? People are still using traditional search, but I'm already shifting my content strategy over to that way. As well as my ICPs are way more detailed. So I used to just be generalized ICPs. I mean, I could just kind of make one up, and because we're doing generalized content for inbound marketing, right? That's our ultimate goal. Now I need to know exactly, where it used to be if you just did HVAC in a neighborhood. Okay, well, you're residential HVAC. You're person who owns a home, right, that needs HVAC services. I mean, it was really easy, right? For an ICP, you could come up with something real simple. Well, now
Yeah.
it's like, no, what neighborhoods do you service, and what kind of houses do they have? Are
Right.
they
Right.
brand new houses and they're going to want subscriptions because they're new first time homeowners and they don't know how to do it themselves? Are these houses made in the 1970s and they're going to be DIY? And we need to talk about when to hire a professional. Or are these historic homes and we need to figure out how to retrofit that house and also, talk to the ghost that lives there to make it work.
Exactly.
Exactly,
that,
exactly.
that's
Much
that,
more
that's an
detailed.
expensive investment right there. But
I
let
have
me
one of those houses.
yeah. I want to talk about this and talk about the techniques, like
Mhm.
the practical techniques that you need to utilize to be successful here. You brought up content quite a bit in this. I know that there's more to this game than just content, but I do want to get your perspective specifically on what is the set of practical ways that we can integrate content to be more successful in this new AI experience in Google and these LLMs that are also now being are a prevalent part of the search experience.
Yeah. So like beyond branded content,
Yeah.
no more generalized content, brand, right? And they're talking about your differentiators and unique angles of your ICPs, like I was talking about. Beyond that, they are noticing a few things. None of this is tested, by the way. It's too new, right? So this is just stuff I'm playing with everybody.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Echo blocks, and that's like we know they love FAQs, so let's do that. Let's make sure we have that with our differentiators and their semantic triplets. They like to talk about that. Let's come up with the semantic triplets that, for our company and be able to write some content around that. Make sure that we use them. Make sure our brand description is a semantic triplet, and then let's make sure that all of our NAP locations are updated to that in our directories. So those are some of the few things. We know they love schema markup. So I always have loved schema markup, but I'm not a 100% expert. I'm now on the hunt to figure out how to get the ultimate list of all schema markups you could possibly do. And then you figure out, do we need to build a tool to add these on? Do we need, one person that just sits there and they just make schema markup for everything on our websites that we never had before? All their job is to look at, content and figure out where those opportunities are, get it drafted and get it implemented. Where are we going? But schema markup needs to be we need to turn that up to 11. So
Yeah.
definitely.
And so with respect to schema markup, these other aspects, where do we get into the play of investing in new pieces of content, right? Like taking things that don't already exist. For example, you brought up earlier when we were prepping for the session, concepts around like chunkability and like how we organize and
Mm-hmm.
think about our content and then invest into the content, like with things like FAQ, schema, and all those other
Mm-hmm.
points. But can you explain that chunkability piece to our listeners?
Oh, definitely. Chunkability. Just made a tool on this for fun. It's great. Gonna roll it out for all my writers to train them. So, chunkability is a big way. It's a big shift of the difference between how traditional search engines, right, and algorithms, they read an entire page and then they rank that page. Where these AI bots and LLMs, they read it by chunk, passage, paragraph. They call them chunks, right? And they read it by chunk and then they decide if they're going to resurface that chunk. So every chunk needs to be able to live by itself. It needs to be able to be within boundaries. It needs to be on topic. It needs to answer the questions. This is where you can get into those echo blocks and those semantic triplets and start utilizing those in these chunks. But you want to make sure that your page, every chunk, is able to stand alone by itself. Like I said, I just created a chunkability tool that I'm going to be using to re-optimize as well as train our new writers on that as we're getting through the process of, answer first, some of these patterns that we see about, but make sure that all of our content is chunkable, and it has a high chunkability. If you guys want the tool, it's on my LinkedIn, of course. And the idea, like I said, behind it is that new formatting. Instead of the whole page that we care about each individual chunk on that page.
Let's talk about this chunkability concept with respect to Google's push for multimodal experiences or content, particularly like as we think about new types of assets that are being used, say video, say audio, say some sort of dynamic experience on the page, like a scale or rating experience. How does that play into the chunkability of a page, and how critical is it to understand what you're putting into the page before it gets chunked out?
Yeah. For me, it's making sure these bots can read it. Right. So I keep saying, to avoid images for your charts, right? So it's a HTML. Can we make sure we can put in an HTML version of that chart and that graph? Not just put in an image. If you do an image, of course, we want to do a lot of alt text on that, right? We want to do a description if we have to, if that's the best we can do, let's do it. But we really want to see about the HTML behind it. So whatever it is you're doing, whether it's a video, whether it's, a chart, whether it's a new scale, it's that HTML, old school, back to the day, right? Right? Is it going to be what those read? A friend of mine even just did a quick study where he kind of gamed the system to see how they work. He's a dev. He's not an SEO, so he has no morals or scruples. No, I'm joking. And he was able to trick the LLMs into giving him these weird results off the page because it was like React and different ones that are JS heavy. And he just put the HTML, basically almost like white on white text we be able to do. He just put in some extra HTML. There was instructions and it popped up. How long that'll work, I don't know. I'm not a black hat SEO. I'm all about sustainable SEO, so I won't be doing that. But it was a great place for me to see and be like, wow, if your site is JS heavy, and you're not able to like make a whole new site, right? We don't have time to make a whole new site. Or we don't have the budget right now to make a whole new site. Let's go look and see what the HTML is there and make sure the HTML represents what's on the site.
All right, let's transition to, I think, one of the most challenging topics that we're going to talk about, and it's really a function of this disruptive period of time, the fact that the SERP experience is shifting radically, and how we measure what we used to call SEO now is GEO, maybe it's AEO. It's really hard to pinpoint what's happening. I mean, we've seen in the past couple months, Google make some introductions to more data in Google Search Console, but arguably we are still driving the car without a map. And I'd like to get your perspective on measurement challenges. How should we as SEOs and search professionals adapt our KPIs, adapt our success metrics as we're optimizing for these different approaches or thinking about these different approaches in general?
Yeah, and this is going to be another one, kind of like the content is universal strategy is no longer going to work. You can't just track keywords ranked in organic traffic and then clicks, right? Or conversions.
Right.
We did that with everybody. I'm going to have to start doing specialized, right? Traffic and KPIs and metrics that tie back to what the client, what we've decided on with the client. I have kind of a few ideas, we should, break out traffic, of course, or let's look at this. Or I look at a studio report that says how much we're getting from ChatGPT so we can get, conversion rates. But what it really comes down to is me transitioning clients and C-levels from organic traffic and, keyword ranking to, how are we going to track brand visibility, right? In these LLMs, what do we want to track, which really matters, which I think it's branded terms in your products and then maybe your niche, right? Like a couple of your niches. And then, as we're tracking that, right, how do we track what progress is? What is success? And I really think that we're going to have to go down to tracking by, organic/source. I think direct's going to come underneath us, right? Because if people are doing all their research and all their buyer journey right there inside that LLM and then walking away and coming back, then we're going to want to see if that direct traffic is coming up, right? So we're definitely going to want to do that. And I think this is going to be the big one. This is the big one. I think that we need to not do it overall. We just want to track our homepage and our core pages. That's what we're focusing on. Yeah, we're focusing on our brand. We're focusing on our products. We're focusing on getting those in there, right? We're focusing on that sort of awareness and that sort of traffic to see if we can get the sales and conversions right there, right? And so
I asked this question a couple
days. We'll see if it gets adopted. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
I asked this question a couple of days ago to another one of our guests, and I got to ask you this question: like, is it still important to track keyword rankings? And would you, if you could only choose one, would you track keyword rankings over tracking AI overview or any other AI LLM response?
I want it all. Right? I mean, what is this, Highlander? There can only be one.
He had the same response, and I said, you have to choose one.
Right? I know. This is tough. Yes, I think in general, we should also be tracking keyword rankings. That's still like a huge amount of search. That's the majority of where our search is still coming from, right?
Yeah.
Google also says, oh, well, the way to track this now is to see these underlying keyword rankings. And I'm kind of like, thanks a lot, Google. Like, I'm not buying that from you, but whatever.
Yeah.
But when it comes down, like if I only have to choose one, right? If I have a client and I only have to choose one right now, again, everybody's going to hate this. It depends, right, on the client, right? So am I working with a large corporation that we know that their industry's going double over double, and the C-levels are like, we care about AI search and we want to make sure that we're ready for that, right? Then that's what we're going to be tracking, right? If I'm working with somebody who's, they're, service area business, again, like HVAC or plumber, and they just want to make sure that they're in Google Business Profile right now, and that's their biggest thing, and their budgets, gives me 3 hours a month, right? I'm going to stick with just tracking those keywords until that traffic shifts 100%. So that's kind of how I would make that decision of if I can track keywords or if I can track an AI channel, right, or AI overviews. It would definitely be on the goals, right, of that company.
Yeah. And I think that there's a value behind this historical keyword ranking data that you just can't give it up yet. And to your point, it's still where the majority of the traffic comes from. But like its utility in what we do to plan is very different, right? And I think that's one of the big changes that that's happening in our SEO world is the planning is really changing. So let's talk about planning a little bit. Let's talk about how you think of specific steps that SEOs and search experts should be taking right now to achieve success on organic search. What should we be doing as SEOs to win, to be successful, considering SERPs are changing, AI mode is getting more pervasive, we are seeing market share shift to other LLMs like ChatGPT. How do we win? What's the plan? Amy, save us all.
Uh-oh, we're all going down now. Save us all.
I love it.
My own cult. No, I'm joking. No, I think, right, what can we do and what should we be doing like right now, right? What can we do right now as this shift is happening and so much is changing, right? And I think, right now we need to make sure that the bots, we have all these new bots, right? And they're all different, so we got to make sure that they can crawl our site. And it's funny because I came up to this a couple months ago where I was like, hey, let's get back to basics. And let's make sure that, you can get crawled, indexed, right, rendered, all those things that, AI bots that we need to care about them doing, not just Google any longer. And so we need to make sure that they can crawl the site and how those layers work out with your CDN and your security and everything else. It's not as simple as just doing robots text like I was hoping it was going to be. And so I think we really need to make sure that they can't see it. They're not going to resurface you, and then when we go from there, what we really need to be looking about, right, is, I said, that content shift of how we're looking at content and what is the purpose of that content. Why are we creating content? It's no longer for inbound traffic. It's to get our products and our brand surfaced in those answers and that generative ideas. So the type of content we create definitely needs to start to change, and also just figure out what we're tracking. You know what I mean? Right now, I'm tracking so many different things. So I'm tracking every, LLM that a client gets. I got a Looker Studio report that I can track, right? And look in there. I've got it busted out, GA in GA4. I've got AI overviews with segmentation as best as we can do, right? I've got, the LLM tracking in GA4. I'm looking at, what can we track? Brand impressions. What can we track? What can we do to be able to try to make some data-driven decisions for our, clients?
Right.
And that's where we're at, is like, well, we don't have any data. Well, let's see, what can we get? What can we do to try to make some decisions around this? And it's not going to be perfect, and it's going to be a lot less than we've ever had. But let's do that. And when we're talking about keywords, it's no longer keyword research to be able to do a content plan off those high value keywords, right? That have a little difficulty. It's keyword research to get to know our brand better and their competitors and get to know their market. And then it's to look at, based on their topic clusters, based on those core pages on their product and services, what are those keywords that give us an idea of what that market is searching for. More of a guide, no longer or an indicator, no longer the hard and fast guide of how we create content.
So I got to ask you, on this same action plan piece, when we think about then taking those insights and those data points into content or into web pages, what we do on a page, what are you seeing working there? Like, what are you doing with maybe some of your clients, some of your projects, some of the experiences you've had to take something that I've learned, that I've gotten from AI, from GA4, that we're seeing LLM traffic go to? How are you then turning that into like a task on a website, whether it be content or web related?
Yeah. So just to say again, this is so new that I don't want to say that I've tested it. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm not. There's no hard and true things. I haven't reversed engineered everything. It's changing every day.
Sure.
Can you what
Yeah.
right? So what I'm doing with that information, right, and what I've been able to take is not only have I been able to just show it to my clients, like, hey, here's what I'm doing. Like, we know AI is coming. We know AI search is coming. We know that this is taking over the world, and whether it's taking over your industry right now or not, here's what I'm tracking so we know when to make that shift. I'm on top of it. I've got this, right? I'm making ideas. We've got a plan for this, right? And the first plan is to see when we need to make that shift. Um, and so that's the first thing that I'm doing that I find, tangible. People's like tactics or whatever, but just being able to show people and express to the higher ups, right, that what I'm doing and that I'm actually tracking it and on it has been fantastic for me. They love it. They love it. They just love
Yeah.
knowing that I'm already taking care of it, right? I'm already aware, and they can come and ask me questions when they hear these things, on the LinkedIn world or whatever. And so from that data, though, from that information, right, then we start seeing where do we want to go? I mean, if we're getting traffic to ChatGPT with a high conversion rate, well, then we need to focus on optimizing for ChatGPT, right? And we know that
Mm-hmm.
ChatGPT, goes and has a certain way of questions. Let's see what we can do for brand visibility in there. Let's create content for there. I don't know a lot about ChatGPT. I don't know why I picked that one. I know a lot more about Gemini that runs AI mode, right? That we know that there's query fan out. There's a tool from Mike King that kind of simulates the query fan out, that we can think. And I do believe query fan out is going to be different than people also ask, and different than that. I do believe it's going to be a different way of going about it. And
Right.
so once we get that query fan out, we get those, like I said, those in-depth ICPs. We know which questions, prompts, what are people going to be asking, query fan out, create the content around that, do that in the chunking, make sure the bots can read it, right? Have that as much schema markup as we possibly can find, and then keep evolving as we're going on. I know
Absolutely.
none of this is going to be hard and fast in the way we go, because like I said, it's brand new. You can't test something that's this new.
Yeah.
I know one thing that I've tested, and it's really fast and loose, but worked, was when AI overviews came out. I was like, how do we optimize this for it? Whether you're getting a click or not, if it's on the top of a SERP, I want my client in there, right? I want my client at the
Yeah.
very top, even if it's just people reading it. And I did the old featured snippet. So, figure it out, right? Do the research on it, see what's in there. I came up with some ChatGPT prompts and some different things to do some of the research for me. And then, how do we draft something for that piece of content, right, that's already on their site? That's the same way you would optimize for a featured snippet. We're just doing it for an AI overview. And I have seen a drastic switch over. So as those featured snippets turned into AI overviews, they're popping up like crazy on the clients that I've done that. So the clients that I've spent months, month over month working on that, I'm seeing not only the shift of them appearing in AI views when they appear, but when those featured snippets turn into AI overviews, they're still being included. And so
Yeah.
that's been a great one. Yeah.
Love it.
Mhm.
Okay. We're going to transition to our lightning round, which is probably the most exciting part of any of our episodes. So these are questions that I'm going to ask you, Amy. Quick response. Some of them only require a word or two, but hopefully we can dive into some fun and interesting responses. So first one, buy or sell. Buy or sell. Are you buying or selling that AI mode in Google will eventually replace traditional search as the primary search experience?
By 100%. 100%. So
Yeah.
do you want me to get into it? Google's already
Yeah,
said,
yeah, let's do it a little bit. Yeah, I mean, yeah, Google's
right.
already said it. Yeah,
Google
exactly,
already said
exactly,
it.
exactly.
Google's already come out and said officially, as AI mode grows, we're just going to be integrating it into traditional search.
Right.
We see them, it's
Right.
on the left instead of on the right. So you already know that they look at it differently. We're seeing it in the bar. Want to try AI mode? I saw commercials. I'm seeing, because I'm cheap, and so I can
Yeah.
buy all the streaming. So I got streaming with commercials. Like, it's the 1980s again, and
Yeah.
they're promoting it where people are taking pictures and talking to it directly there in AI mode. So if they're
Yep.
doing commercials on TV ads, man, it's going to take over. It's bound and determined. AI. It's a AI mode's
I love
already
that.
right,
Yeah,
right,
I
right.
love that.
It's
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
exactly,
Yeah, I'm
exactly.
100% with you. It's
Yeah,
totally a buy. Totally a buy.
yeah,
All right,
totally a
crystal
buy.
ball. Little harder one.
Yeah.
Crystal ball. So looking into the future here, Amy, like where things are going. Tell me how the relationship between AEO and traditional SEO will evolve over the next 2 years.
2 years. Ooh, that's so long for artificial
It
intelligence,
is. It
isn't
is.
it? Right, right, right. So, like I said, I don't know if I was an early adopter. I've been stoked about this since I found it on a Wednesday night at 10:30 on Bing, right? Copilot. I was like, this
Yeah.
is it's going to take over the world. And so since I've been doing that, and I've been watching it to see how fast it's growing, right? And to see where user behavior is going and how fast it's being adopted by the general public, not just us techies, the general public, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I am like, it's taken over, right? So we're not there yet, right? We're not, AI mode hasn't taken over traditional search, but we know it's going to, right? So that's going to be the same
Mm-hmm.
traffic, right? Right.
Yep. Yep.
So as far as saying, hey, I'm a traditional SEO and I just do SEO, and by that you mean you do 10 blue link SEO, right? Right. You're gonna adapt or die, adapt or
Yeah.
die.
Yep.
AEO, GEO, whatever we end up calling it, whatever you as a professional want to call it, as long as it's for AI search, right? That's where we're going, and that's where it needs to be.
Agreed.
Mhm.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, totally.
Totally think it's going to become a key relationship between those two. All right. Toss up. Would you choose to focus on optimizing for voice search or visual search if you had limited resources?
Right? So hard because I'll tell you that Google AI mode where you take a picture and then you talk at it though, because if you're taking a picture, you just talk at it and ask it a question. See, I'm so torn. I'm so torn between visual search and voice search. Okay, now
Okay.
this is right now, and I'll tell you what I'm basing this off of. I come from a blue collar family. I have a huge, all my friends are blue collar, a lot of that. And I will tell you, those people do not type anything. By those people, I mean my people, blue collar people. My brother, right, my uncles, all my friends, they don't type into their phones. They talk into it. They talk to Google because it's just way easier for them. And so I have a feeling, when we're talking about generalized public and we're talking about going over to the masses, we're probably going to see more voice search over visual search come in.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a reason why all the Google commercials show people talking into their phone.
Mm-hmm.
Right. They could have very easily chosen
Right.
people looking at videos or doing some sort of visual comparisons, but no, they chose voice. And so I think there's going to be a huge push on voice over the next 6 to 12 months. And I think it's easier. It's an easier way to search. It's an easier way to discover if you can just say what you want versus having to type it in or visually refine your expectations. All right.
Especially that we can do it in complete sentences now. We can ask a complete question and get an answer now.
And get an answer. It's not confused. Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So what's the word? Give me one word that describes the current state of SEO with the shift in AI in search and discovery.
Wild.
Wild.
It's either wild or we're on fire, but that's more than one word. It's wild. It's wild. It's wild to see so many people like me who are like, this is so exciting, and let's poke it with a stick, and what are our ideas, and let's find all the the DOJ docs, and let's go through them and see what we can do, and what's come up with new ideas, and what's your theory, and let's test this, and let's build this, and that is just absolutely wild and awesome. And it's also absolutely wild to me, the people that are like, this is this is a waste of time, the people that are like kind of staunchy, like SEO is SEO, and absolutely wild to me that there's this is like kind of resistance to it. Because I know when I joined SEO, that was one of the things I loved about it. Like SEO wasn't even supposed to be a marketing channel, right?
Right.
SEO's made it a marketing channel. Did it have a name then?
Yeah.
No. Right? Right? They invented it, right? So like I feel like the whole industry's been based off of that, right? What can we invent for ourselves and make for ourselves? And I mean, along with that, like we had updates called Fred, right? Because they didn't want to name the update, and so he named it after his fish, right? Like as a joke. And then we all adopted it, right? Panda, penguin, right? So this has always just been a fun, imaginative, let's see what we can do. We're going to make this a real thing sort of industry. And so I think it's wild that we're in a spot in a time where us that are into that really can thrive. I mean, there's just so much we can do. And I also think it's absolutely wild that there's so many people in this industry that are fighting that.
Yeah.
Like, where'd you come from?
Well, change is hard. Change is hard, Amy. And I don't think everyone wants to adopt it. So, speaking of which, let's jump into our last lightning round question. Game plan. You're an SEO director at an agency. What's your game plan for balancing AEO, GEO, and SEO in your 2026 strategy?
Right? How do I do this? And so, again, this comes a lot back down to tracking, right? Where is the majority of that client's traffic coming from, and where do we see the growth, right?
Mm.
If you are a B2B SaaS company, it's going to be very different than that plumber or HVAC, right, client. But as we're doing this thing, here's what I'm doing, right? Here's what I'm doing, and I am identifying in my brain and on paper and where I'm going. This is what we did for SEO. This is what we're doing for AEO. This is what we're doing for GEO. This is what we're doing for AEO/GEO. How are we going to be explaining this to the clients? What terms are we going to be using? But here's what we always did. And I've already got everybody trained that there's on page, right? There's off page, there's technical SEO. And then local
Right.
SEO is a different type of SEO. So all my clients already know that. So I'm going to be able to do a chart. Here's what we're doing for traditional SEO, right? Here's what we're not doing anymore because it doesn't matter. Here's what we're doing brand new for AEO, and here's what we're transitioning that stuff that doesn't matter over into AEO. Here's what we're doing on page, off page, right? Technical SEO. Here's our changes, here's our additions, here's our extractions. Make it really clear and simple. That also takes time for me to spend a lot of time, right? Formulating that and figuring out and then trying to simplify what I think I'm going to be doing and then how to deliver that, which is, usually the hardest part is simplifying it for me.
Yeah.
Right.
But even simplifying it for the client. Yeah. And I love the foundational nature that you got to start with the foundation. If it's not there, then it's not going to scale anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how I plan on going about it. We are definitely moving over to AEO because we want to be your partner in moving you into an AI search world, right? I mean, that's what a lot of us, right, we're here to do. So we are going to be doing different tactics and doing different things. That little template that I'm going to have, right, isn't going to be the same for every single client. That's just going to be the starter one. And then other clients are going to need specialty things because, again, like I keep saying, we're done with the generalized world. We're done with generalized SEO marketing. We're all going to have to do a lot more work. We're all going to have to get a lot more customized for each client as we go along.
Yep. And that's a great place for us to wrap up this episode of the Voice of the Search podcast. Thank you to Amy Jurenka from SEO Sustainable for joining us. If you'd like to connect with Amy, you can find a link to her LinkedIn profile in our show notes or at voicesofsearch.com. For more information about Amy and SEO Sustainable, visit amyjurenka.com. If you haven't subscribed yet and want a daily stream of SEO and content marketing knowledge in your podcast feed, hit the subscribe button in your podcast app or on YouTube, and we'll be back in your feed soon. Okay, that's all for today. But until next time, remember, the answers are always in the data.